Hi, I'm Scott Simpson.
And I'm Sharla Steever.
And welcome to Humanity, a Human-Shaped Learning. It's our podcast. This is this is episode 3, I think. Yeah.
Yes. And this one is going to be all about relationships. And although we will get into relationships connected to learning soon, this one actually is going to focus more on just the importance of personal relationships in our lives. We talked about uniqueness in our last episode and how it's so important that we learn to value the uniqueness in each human being.
Yeah.
That we each bring a gift to the world that is uniquely ours. And that's certainly important when we think about learning and we think about what it is to really put the human first in learning and in our schools. But today what we're going to talk about is then how we, as unique individuals, come together to form relationships. And so that's our focus for today's episode.
Yeah, well, it strikes me, how could you even have a relationship if you're not having a relationship with a unique person that is, if you're having a relationship with your idea of who somebody is or who they ought to be, then it's not really a relationship, is it?
Well, when you think about it, okay, just think about your best friend.
Okay.
The person that you think of, when you think of wanting to go out and do something fun and have a great experience with that person that you have in mind. Yeah. What makes them your best friend? What is it about them that makes you want to go and be with them? Most likely, as you're sitting there thinking about that, it's not that they always do everything just right or they have this sort of sterilized life that is perfect, but rather it's the imperfections. It's the maybe quirkiness even of who they are.
It's even a little bit hard to put into words because I think when you have to reduce a person that you have a really deep relationship with to a list of their qualities, I mean, you could come up with some qualities, but it's really not easy to do that because it's hard to put in because it's such a complex thing.
Right. And it's the whole package. Yeah. It's the person with maybe things they say, with their sense of humor, with their, qualities that they bring of being able to listen well or whatever, make you feel important maybe. Yeah. It's all of that.
It makes me think about how, I've had some people I care about who have passed away. And I've read their obituaries, and they're great. They're great, but you're always struck with that's really nice, but that just falls short.
Yeah.
No matter how nice they are, no matter how long they are, they fall short of the person. Right. And so I think it's healthy to know that a person. Our relationship with a person is not going to be able to be summed up very easily.
Right.
And a relationship with a student, with a colleague, with anybody, it's not something that you can easily just sum up. And so I think that gives us maybe a little bit of humility about that. That if I am tempted to sum up a student or to sum up another person, I'm probably falling far short of who that person is,
I find right now, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, but during this pandemic, it has been, I think, it's been very hard for me to not be in active relationships like I normally am. And it's not to say that the relationships are lost, but there are a lot of people in the course of a week that I will interact with because of different things that I'm a part of. And those people are people that I care deeply about. Yeah. And when I don't get to be around them and I don't get to have the time with them that I normally get, I start to sense this, I get a sense of isolation that for me can be kind of unhealthy. And it was interesting because one of the articles we're going to look at today actually talks about that. And there were a couple things that were just jumped off at the page. Wow. For me, that we'll bring up after a bit here.
Great.
But yeah, so this whole idea of relationships and their importance in our lives is what we're going to look at today. And I've chosen a couple things for
Awesome.
this one.
Awesome.
So
You got a third thing for
I
us?
do. I have a third
Awesome.
thing that I'd like to share, and it is a poem again. This poem is one that I have loved for a long time, and it does talk about relationship within it, but kind of a special kind of relationship. And I've written a couple questions that I thought would be great for reflection as a result of reading this.
Well, we'll put this up on the screen so you can follow along as Sharla reads it.
The poem is Love Does That. All day long, a little burro labors, sometimes with heavy loads on her back, and sometimes just with worries about things that bother only burros. And worries, as we know, can be more exhausting than physical labor. Once in a while, a kind monk comes to her stable and brings a pair. But more than that, he looks into the burro's eyes and touches her ears, and for a few seconds the burro is free and even seems to laugh. Because love does that. Love frees. By Meister Eckhart.
That's nice.
I love this poem, and I love the imagery of it. I can imagine that burro and the heavy, hard work that the burro has done, and this person who sees that in her, who comes each day maybe.
Yeah.
And so it made me think of this question that I wanted to pose that you can think about or we can talk about.
Yeah.
But the idea that came to mind was, do you have a monk, I'll put that in quotes, in your life who comes by to offer a look or touch that you need? And also, are you a monk for someone else? And I just started thinking about the people in my life who sort of serve as that role. They're the ones that, for me, notice. They notice the need. You know, this monk is noticing this burro out there doing the things that burros do, you know, and bringing something occasionally, or even just that touch of, I'm going to scratch her ears because I know that'll feel good for her, and she's been working so hard. And I'm going to look into her eyes and I'm really going to see her. And I just think about the people in my life that are that for me. And they are so important. And when I feel like they're not present for some reason, or they're really distant for a while, maybe physically, I don't get to see them or spend time with them, it's really hard on me as a human being to not have that.
Well, the poem took me, I think I'm going to get into your questions. It took me to my relationships with my animals. We've talked about this a lot, and this kind of takes us back, you know, a little bit to some of the things that we've talked about before with our connection with the world, with creation, with animals, with nature. But those relationships, I think a lot of times our relationships with animals teach us a lot about the importance of our relationships with each other, with other human beings, which is a kind of ironic that maybe animals, I guess we could, this will be a different philosophical episode where we discuss whether or not animals are human beings. But we learn a lot about being human beings from animals, I think.
Yes.
I think about my golden retriever, who's very old for golden retrievers. She's 12 going on 13. And she's got this deep empathy. Anytime anyone is upset or highly emotional, she comes over and just leans on you and lays her paw up on you. I think about looking into her eyes. I think about the communication that goes on there that is very much no agenda. You know, no agenda whatsoever, just connection and caring and showing like the neat thing about the eye contact is recognition, being recognized by someone else in a strong way like that. And I guess I would say in one way, and maybe, I don't know, maybe a lot of people feel this way. In one way, my animals are a little bit like the monks in my life sometimes, because it's like when I feel like pretty left out, pretty alone, they can come and just in a very, like I said, without any agenda, just come and acknowledge me and acknowledge that they're excited about seeing me or happy to have me or appreciate whatever it is I do for them. And I suppose I do that some for them as well. But that's animals, which maybe are human beings. But I think it does teach us something about what is best sometimes in us as human beings, because love does that. Love is not an agenda-driven thing. Right. It's not transactional. I mean, I'm not coming and doing something good for you just because I'm gonna get something. It's because I see the human being in you, and we connect, and it matters that we connect and that we take care of each other.
I think it's so important that we have both sides of this in our lives, that we are maybe that monk role for someone else, that we are noticing. Are there people in our lives that we really take time to notice how they're doing? Yeah. And are there people that we have in our lives that do that for us? Mm-hmm. I think of the church I attend, I have a lot of very close friends there, but there's one in particular that we don't necessarily do a ton of things together, but she's so good about checking in with me. Yeah. How are you? And she sits down and we have a cup of coffee, and she really wants to know. And there's something about having that kind of a relationship, even though maybe we don't see each other the whole rest of the week and we don't necessarily communicate any other time. There's this sense of, I feel important to her, and she's definitely important to me. Mm-hmm. And so then I want to reciprocate that in my life for the people around me. Are there people that I can be that for? I think sometimes I especially find myself connecting to maybe young moms or people whose kids are heading off to college, because these are things that I have been through, and I see them, and I want them to know, because it can feel like you are not seen during certain times in life, and especially hard times, if it can feel like, all the attention is going to the baby, or all the attention is going to the child who's heading off doing those great things, and that parent is left maybe feeling like, have I done enough? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I important? Mm-hmm. And so being that person who sees them, I think, is really important. And that's true for school. When we think about
absolutely.
Noticing, being the one, sometimes I hear quotes all the time about teachers being the one, that one teacher made the difference because they noticed me, and I think that's true. It's something that we can do.
And it's, and the funny thing is, a lot of times it has almost nothing to do with teaching technique.
Right.
Or with your brilliant knowledge of your subject area or anything else. It has more to do with being a real human being with other real human beings. And that, it's like that's first and foremost. Teaching technique is important. It's great. And knowing your stuff, knowing your subject area, and being able to be interesting as you talk, or to ask good questions, or all those other things we talk about as educators and teachers, they're all important. But first and foremost, are you a real human being with these other real human beings who are, they're required to be in your presence for at least an hour if you're a secondary teacher, but a whole day if you're an elementary teacher. They have to be there. And so are we being real human beings? Are we making space for that? Not just space for technique and teaching and stuff. That's all important, but it comes in the context of being human beings together.
I can think of times in my life where maybe I felt like I was lacking this. And maybe as you heard the poem and maybe considered the question, maybe it was really hard to come up with an answer. Is there someone who is that for me? And I can think of times in my life where I don't know that I felt like I had that as much as in other times. And so noticing that about where we are in our lives, I think just taking that time to think about, do I have someone that's helping me along the way and that I'm willingly accepting help from? Because sometimes there's a sense of I got to do this on my own. But do we accept help when we need it and when it's, being offered?
Yeah.
So it's something that I know I think about a lot because I am definitely a very relational person. I tend to be a little more extroverted than introverted, and I really enjoy and thrive on good, strong, healthy relationships.
Yeah.
So we have an article that we wanted to share with you today, and it's one that I spent a little time with, and it comes out of the University of Minnesota, and I just found this so interesting, and so I hope you'll take a look at it, but we'll just highlight a couple things out of this article. It's not very long, but it's really focused on well-being and living a healthy life. And so when I think about relationships, sometimes I almost see them as this sort of bonus thing we have in life. Like,
Yeah.
I'm lucky I have this friend.
You got your food, you got your house, you got, and then, you get lucky, you get some friends, too.
Maybe you can have a friend.
Yeah.
And, friends are so much more, and relationships are so much more than that. I feel like they should be right up there with those basic needs.
Yeah.
Food, shelter, clothing, water. I have those things, but I also need to be in relationship with someone.
Absolutely.
And this article really, I think, lends itself well to that. And right away in the very beginning of the article, there's a great sentence where it says, "There's compelling evidence that strong relationships contribute to a long, healthy, and happy life. And conversely, the health risks from being alone or isolated in one's life are comparable to the risks associated with cigarette smoking, blood pressure, and obesity."
Wow. Yeah.
So when I read that, I could totally relate and totally agree with what this author was saying about relationships. So,
well, and I just for a pause, I'll say this: sometimes we like to relegate relationship stuff to the soft side of things.
Right.
The not that's nice. That's kind of touchy feely. It's kind of like whatever. But no, it's like as absolute as food. It's as absolute as shelter. It's as absolute as every other necessity, physical necessity, to have, because we are relational beings. We're built not to be by ourselves. We're built to be in community with other human beings. And so that's so incredibly important. And it's incredibly important to not just pretend like it's not, to ignore that and to say, hey, I can be on my own. I can take care of it all by myself. Well, that's great. But that's not what you were built for. And that runs thin after a little bit.
and it's not the best way.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There are times when you gotta make it. You gotta make it or break it on your own. That comes along, and that's great. But what gives you that resilience? And I guarantee you'll find this out if you ever get into a situation like that. When people are trying to struggle through something difficult on their own, what gives them the resilience to get through it is that they know they're going to be back with their loved ones soon. And they're going to draw on the memories of their loved ones. And they're going to draw on the community that can't be present, but that they know is still with them, even though they're not here physically.
Right.
So those relationships are so important.
They really are. And there were a few highlighted, I guess I would call them health benefits from relationships and that came out in this article. One is that people with those strong relationships tend to live longer.
Yeah.
And I think about, how is that? How is it that just being in relationship with someone will help you live longer? But I can remember my grandpa, and this is such a good example of that particular thing. My grandma died when they had been married for about 50 years, a little over that, 55 maybe, and it felt too early. It felt way too early.
Yeah.
But in their relationship, my grandpa relied so much on my grandma, and I was really worried that he would die soon after because he just wasn't used to being alone, and he was used to having her by his side for everything.
Yeah.
And we all were worried. And then he happened to become reacquainted with a high school girlfriend all these years later, who she had her own life and had raised her family and been married, and they came together and they got married at 80.
Wow.
And then got another 15 years together.
Wow.
And I just think of that relationship is what allowed for that.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
That's
I mean,
great.
one of the most wonderful love stories that you can imagine. And we were all so thankful for this second grandma,
Yeah.
but also just that he had that opportunity for companionship and a relationship that was meaningful. And it helped him to live longer.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some other things that this article points out is the way that it helps you deal with stress. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that's something you'd like to talk about at all when you think about the importance of being able to share with somebody when it comes to letting go of stress of the day. I know I tend to need to talk it out.
Sure.
But
Well, I think you got to know yourself, and I think quite often we do know ourselves, and we can find the things that are going to relieve stress. But I know more often than not, the people I'm in deep relationship with will have an insight into me that I don't have into myself. I know my wife has said a lot of times, okay, what's going on? How are you? Why are you feeling this way? I said, oh, I'm not. I'm fine. I said, no, I know something's going on.
Yes.
You're, whatever it is, whatever those signs were that she saw, and she knows me well enough to know that something's going on, and it's not something that I am consciously aware of, and she helps me to become aware of it, and then to help me deal with it. So I think that's one of the things that especially a deep relationship. It's not just relationship for relationship's sake. It's when you get to know someone and they get to know you, they have insights into you that you don't have into yourself. Now, how does that translate into the classroom? I think it can. I think if we really know our students, if we really know, then we're going to be aware when something different's going on, and whether it's something that they're not aware of, or maybe it's just something that they don't really want to verbally acknowledge to you. But if you're aware of it, then you can begin to make those adjustments. To say, hey, I know that if I press Jamie's buttons today, he's gonna have a problem. So I'm gonna go out of my way to make sure that we arrange things so that Jamie doesn't have to, because he's not in a good place today.
That reminds me too of the importance that a teacher's role can be for their students, for students who struggle with relationships. I can remember over the years there were a variety of reasons why students I had really struggled to make good, healthy friendships while I had them in my class. And that became a goal of mine, was to help them connect. Can they find another person that they really feel at home with and can be themselves? And sometimes it was things like they may have been on the spectrum with Asperger's or something, where social cues and things like that were really difficult. Well, that doesn't mean they need it less, but they might need assistance in getting there and helping them figure out how to be in good relationship.
I think also, just speaking of good relationship, I don't know how many times I've known students at a lot of times at the high school level and at the college level. I taught there as well, who struck me as really ripe for a codependency. You know, really needing identity out of someone else, and so therefore they're willing to not be who they are in order to have a relationship. And you know, we talked about in the last episode, we talked about valuing uniqueness. And when a relationship is based on valuing and celebrating uniqueness, and when I as a teacher can let a student know, boy, your uniqueness is a real asset, it's not a problem. I don't know, maybe in some ways that helps them realize that maybe this other relationship I'm chasing after, where I'm shutting myself down in order to be connected with this person, maybe that's not as healthy as I deserve, you know, because we really do want, it's not just relationship at all costs. It's a real relationship, which means you can be really who you are and I can be really who I am, and we can connect in positive, sustainable, and sustaining ways.
Right. And that actually leads nicely into the next one, which is this idea of being healthier. Being in these strong relationships, this particular study found actually can help an individual be healthier, as in they don't get as many colds.
Yeah.
There's something about their immunity that is better when they are in that place of really having, I think that's part of a balanced life too.
Yeah.
You know, when they have that balance of people who are interested in them and sharing in their lives, and the other things that we know help us to be healthy.
Yeah.
That really makes a difference.
This is a whole segment of life that sometimes in school we think of as being not part of our purview. You know, we're working on the physical. You know, we got PE and stuff like that. With cognitive, that's important. Okay, we recognize social. Emotional. A lot of times we realize that that's important. But that social health, you know.
Yeah.
How I'm engaging with other people, that's a huge piece of what we need to do.
Definitely. And this last one absolutely jumped off the page at me because I'd never considered it before. I'm going to quote it. It actually, having strong relationships helps you to feel richer.
Wow.
And it says a survey by the National Bureau of Economic Research of 5,000 people found that doubling your group of friends has the same effect on your well-being as a 50% increase in income.
Wow. Wow.
No, that seems a little out there, but you know, I was thinking about in those times where I feel really connected and I'm getting that good balance of interaction. I'm happy. And when you think about at work, maybe when you're at school, you're a teacher and you're in the school, when you are in good relationship with all those people around you, you don't want necessarily more money, you know, maybe you do, but you know, it's more about the quality.
Yeah.
And it is like a raise when I'm not putting out my energy towards dealing with drama and the issues of poor or unhealthy relationships. I do feel like I have gotten a raise. You know, I feel better. I'm less tired. I'm feeling like I'm putting my energy into things that matter.
Yeah. You know, not to bring it down to a lower level, but there really is an economic value because when I'm in community, if I'm in need at a moment for something, okay, then I've got people there to help fill that in, and vice versa. When I've got a friend who's in need, I'm there. Whether we're talking about food or a place to stay for a night, somebody to watch the kids just briefly for a little bit that I can't otherwise be able to afford to do. You know, just get a ride somewhere. You know, I mean, there's really literally an economic benefit to being in relationships with other people. And I wouldn't propose that that's the reason. I mean, I'm going to be friends with these people, get their money. No, but seriously, and that goes back to that thing we're talking about with stress. You know, when I am really in need or at odds with something, or this is not going well, and I really don't have anybody else to turn to, that's really stressful. But when I do have, my people that I can turn to, and I can say, even if it's just had somebody to listen, if I'm needing advice, or if I'm just needing, somebody to be with me for a little bit, then that reduces that stress, and that is a form of wealth,
right?
That we overlook.
Right. Yes. One last thing in this article, it wasn't a particular point listed, but there was something that struck me as we're dealing with this pandemic. It said that the effects of isolation have long-lasting consequences. And I was just thinking about, currently as we deal with social distancing and things like that, there are people, I think of elderly people especially, maybe living in community homes or whatever, who are not able to see anyone that they have those strong relationships with, and they feel very isolated.
Yeah.
And I know I have noticed people that I care about who are older, who look like they have aged a lot in the last few months. And I think it has to do with that isolation.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's something that we should underestimate, I guess, is my takeaway from all of this. That relationships and having people that we can truly connect with on that just very human level, without any false fronts, just who we are, is something that we can't underestimate the impact of throughout our lives.
Yeah. And, I bet we'll talk about this in a different episode, but this is really resonating with me when we talk about something that's also a big part of research in education, and that's relational trust.
Yes.
Because these relationships, these healthy relationships that we have, they imply that idea of trust. That I've got trustworthy people, not people that I'm, because untrustworthy relationships are a cause of stress. But as we develop that trust among our colleagues, with our students, with our administrators in the school setting, the research shows that our students do better. Our students learn better in that environment, and I'm sure we'll probably have another episode where we'll talk about that. But relationships and trusting healthy relationships are so incredibly important.
So as we wrap up this time, one of the things we do like to offer you is a quote that we can leave you with to think about. And that's so I think Scott chose one today.
I did. So did you used to watch Happy Days?
Yes.
Did you like the Fonz?
I love the Fonz.
I love the Fonz. Yeah. So I kind of wanted a black leather jacket for a while, but yeah, I'm not really into that now. But we're not really talking about the Fonz, okay? We're talking about Henry Winkler. We're making a separation between the actor and the character, But I got a quote from Henry Winkler, of all people, because it just jumped off the page at me. And so, because I thought this has a lot of solidity, and it's nice and brief, so it can stick with you. Assumptions, he says, assumptions are the termites of relationships. Assumptions are the termites of relationships. So you know what that says to me is, if I'm operating on some assumptions, okay, that undermines the relationship. Because what I'm doing is I'm assuming things rather than us getting to know each other.
Right.
And I think about that in the classroom, when I operate under assumptions about my students, I know from personal experience, I'm almost always wrong. I need to be open enough to say, hey, can you tell me what's going on? Rather than making assumptions. making assumptions that she's just not listening today. She's just, whatever. To really do the extra work of doing what relationship requires, which is for me to listen, to be engaged and involved, and to pay attention, rather than just making an assumption and acting on it.
That really makes me think of just our political climate right now. Those assumptions are huge. Have you seen, you notice a friend on Facebook post something and it's at odds with where you are. And so I know for me, sometimes I have to really push hard against me making a huge assumption about everything they must think.
I know. And it's a real challenge, I think, right now. And I think we need to be aware of it, because I know I'm just self-indictment. I know that I make assumptions that I would never have made in the past based on very simple things like a piece of clothing that someone's wearing, or just whatever.
A slogan.
And a slogan. And I never have considered myself a person who would do that, who would make an assumption based on some external thing. But our current environment, I don't know what's, I have some ideas about what's happened, but we've got to push against that, to check ourselves and say, you know what? I am not going to operate on assumption with my colleagues, with my community, with my family, or with my students. I'm just going to be who I am and invite them to be who they are, and we'll find out the real deal.
You're going to call the exterminator.
Call that
termites.
Get rid of those termites, because with the termites, the whole house is going to come down. That's a really good way to wrap it. So watch out for those assumption termites.
Yes.
Hope you have a really great week, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks.